One of the major, literally the most primary, if there's a word like that, let's call it what it is, the primary responsibility of government is to provide security and the welfare for citizens. That's captured in Section 14 of our Constitution. So whatever government does, no matter how great whatever they do, if these two things are not attended to, that government has failed. Now, some part of last year, we kind of experienced a bit of slowdown in attacks in some part of last year. But since this year, it's been one form of attack or the other. The carnage on the plateau, and that's on Benue, and now in Borno State. This time, literal assault on our sovereignty, attacking our forward bases somewhere around Lake Chad, inconsistency, which is why the CDS had to head out to reassure the troops, because it's a lot of work to secure Nigeria. We must commend them for their sacrifice, but we must also look at the things we may not be doing right. And that's why we brought in a consultant, security consultant and the CEO of Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, Mr. Kabra Adamu. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Adamu, thank you so much for coming on the program.
My pleasure, Jeffrey. Good evening.
All right, Mr. Adamu, maybe we will, as you speak, we'll share with the people some of the things you've shared with me as to the sequence of what you have noticed as far as the issue of Borno. Well, we're going to use Borno to piggyback on other issues, but there was a time it looked like Borno was kind of calm, but now it looks like every other day there is one form of attack, and the most daring part is the audacity of this anti-state element coming against our forward bases and killing us, our military, our army. Talk to us about some of the things you found out.
Yeah, extremely worrisome, Jeffrey. And for those of us who have been keeping tabs of the incidents that are occurring, we know that Borno was never really out of the woods. We know that, for instance, in the first quarter of 2025, Borno came third in terms of the frequency of fatalities and abduction that has been recorded across the 36 states of the Federation. We also know that the number of attacks, including the method of the attacks, has changed almost significantly. So in that period, first quarter of 2025 into April 2025, we recorded 98 IED incidents. When you compare that with the last quarter of 2024, what we recorded was just 38 of such incidents. So we know that for some odd reasons, the threat elements there, and these are really the two groups, the Jamaat al-Ahl-Sunnah al-Dawati wal-Jihad and the Islamic State in West Africa province. We know that they have acquired some form of expertise to deploy these IEDs. The second element that also became obvious was the usage of complex attacks. And the complex attacks are a combination of different methods when they are attacking. And the one that was most disturbing within that period was their ability to deploy drones. Now, these drones are not, they just get commercial drones and then contract IEDs on them and then try to deploy them, targeting our security forces. The fourth point that also became extremely worrisome was their strategic targeting of locations that the Borno State governor seemed to be interested in returning internally displaced persons to. So we saw that happening in virtually almost all parts of North and then central parts of Borno State, and then of course some parts of Yobe State. So this was the pattern we've been seeing over the last few weeks in Borno. Of course, the incident that occurred in Giwa Barracks when one of the armories, caught fire, at least based on the statement that the military has stated, also created some form of attention in that regard. Also, very significantly within that period, the theater commander was changed and a new person was deployed to that theater commander. And since then, we've seen renewed vigor, as it were, from that person. But overall, the situation in Borno is extremely worrisome. Like I said, so far, in terms of fatalities, it has been the third state with the highest fatalities in the country at the moment.
And I know some part of northern Borno is, from the mappings that we're seeing that your organization has done, we're seeing those extreme places of extreme risk, and the heat map in that sense, the severity of attacks across parts of Borno State. But I want you to also speak to us about beyond Borno State. I remember the DHQ had made a release. And it was very disturbing for me personally, and I guess for a lot of people. The GHQ admitted to the fact that foreign herders, you know, there's a terrorist organization, there's a militia herder, there are all kinds of definitions. There's bandits, there are kidnappers, depending on what part of the country you're looking at. They have different shapes or form. By the end of the day, they're assaulting, they are killing, and they're destroying lives. Talk to us about that admission or that submission by DHQ saying that foreign herders invade, let's say, part of Benue and even Plateau. Because what I process most of the time when I hear that, it's okay, this should be easy. If foreigners are coming into our country, killing our people and taking over land, that is an assault on our sovereignty. Or is it that I don't get the picture correctly?
Yeah, Jeffrey, you get the picture. I mean, we have no choice but to rely, as it were, for now, on the statement by the DHQ. And then we recently published a report when we undertook a study of developments within the Sahel region. And clearly, there is a movement within the Sahel region into Nigeria. Benue has a border with some neighboring countries. And so it's very possible that there is a movement in that regard. But that brings to fore the challenge within our national security arrangement. Our borders are porous. And we are not doing enough to enhance border security. I hear a lot of political posturing. I hear, several conditionings, as it were, by different persons. But the reality is that as of today, our borders are extremely porous. The second point is our criminal justice system that is failing to arrest and punish these persons, whoever they are. It's amazing, Jeffrey, that the transhumance element within ECOWAS allows movement of livestock. Almost all the countries I've studied within the sub-region have mechanisms for recording and monitoring the movement of those transhumans, except Nigeria, the biggest country and the country with one of the highest challenges in insecurity. So my point is that enough of these excuses. We need to act to stop these things. I mean, there is enough knowledge regarding the reasons. If persons are coming in, there is a government department that has the responsibility to strengthen border security. We should wake up, and this is really a call to the National Assembly through their oversight function to ensure that this government department that have responsibility, security has different components. Once you start bringing those components together, then you may see an improvement. But if every time all we speak about is the role of the military, which is perhaps the greatest undoing of our current existence, we have given the military too much responsibilities. All the other ministries, departments, and agencies that have responsibility for security, we're not giving them that same level of responsibility. Border management is not primarily the responsibility of the military. And so if the military is saying that there is an incursion, then we need to look closely at the agencies, the ministries that have responsibility for border management. If they are failing to the extent that we're seeing the types of attacks and the types of incursion, then we need to act speedily, as it were. Because, Jeffrey, the worry that I have for the situation is that this is an existential challenge. If we do not fix it, it's going to affect our future. And enough of excuses, frankly.
So how far-reaching? Because when we heard about the security summit, we understand a committee has been set up to that effect, led by Senator Kwame Bamidele, the Senate leader, for a security summit. So the natural conversation is, what is it that we don't know that we need a summit to aggregate that will make a difference? So I'm going to ask two questions in one. How far can this summit go? And the good news is to the effect, again, that the president has now ordered the what do you call it now, the forest guards, establishment of forest guard. How far-reaching can this be? So two things. The issue of the forest guards on one hand to look at, to secure these thousands or over 1,000 forests we have in Nigeria, and then the essence of a security summit.
Almost every specialist, expert that I have spoken with, including myself, are not supportive of another security summit. If the idea of the security summit is to bring people together to discuss the national security, it's not going to help us in any way. There is enough knowledge, there is enough information. Summits have been organized, conferences, convenings have been organized, severally, including by the National Assembly, by different bodies. So if the methodology is going to change, perhaps to put together a group of individuals, if that is what the summit would do, to harness the several other conferences and summits that have been held, harness their recommendations, and then work out a framework for the implementation of that recommendation, then we're supportive of it. But if the idea is to hold another one, to come out with a set of recommendations similar to what has been done before, then honestly it's a waste of taxpayers' money. What we need right now is especially the National Assembly to use its oversight functions through the committees, and then of course to also through the budgetary process to look closely at what it has approved, to ensure that those requirements, let's remember, Jeffrey, that no sector at the moment has enjoyed as much provision within the 2025 budget as the security sector. So it's not an issue of funding, as long as those the funds are being released. It is rather an issue of making sure those funds are being used for the purposes. So instead of focusing attention on the summit, I think what we in Nigeria would love to see is more oversight and then more, as it were, checks to ensure that the funding provided for in the budget is released and it is used for the purposes that it is being released for. With regards to your second question on the forest guards, this is part of the Renewed Hope agenda. The president has always maintained that, and if you recall, I think last year when he had a meeting with the governors, there was an agreement at that point in time that the governors should go ahead and do it, and maybe because they've not been able to do that, now we're hearing that he has taken that initiative. What it would look like in terms of the framing, what types of weapon they're going to bear, I think these are critical issues because the threat elements they're dealing with have military-grade weapons. So I'm begging the question, if you recruit young people, 2,000 to 5,000 of them, and then you don't give them military-grade weapons, they are going to be at the mercy of these threat elements. So we need to think critically around this. I'm not supportive of the further militarization of our country. I think there are enough weapons in circulation. So we need to be very careful around what kind of weapons, and then of course how we subsume this new arrangement into the overall national security sector or architecture that we have at the moment. So very, very critical questions, and I think the presidency would need to work closely with the National Assembly and with the governors to ensure that the structure and the framing of this new arrangement is one that will be beneficial and would not end up adding. I must state in very clear terms that the existence of ungoverned spaces, especially forested parts, is one of the major challenges that is contributing to our national security challenge at the moment. So anything to reduce the usage of those forests for the criminal activities that are being done at the moment, I'm very supportive of it, but we must do it in a manner that allows for progress, in a manner that reduces the tendency for the further militarization of our country.
So I'm wondering, because I'm looking at, I don't know, perhaps this is a reference for them to flush out terrorists and criminal gangs hiding inside the forest for criminal activities and all of that. If our military is having a hard time sometimes dealing with these guys, what level of weaponry do you think forest guards need to have? Or are they just going to be providing intel in that sense? Because these men, or these bad elements, as we choose to call them, they are upscaling in terms of their weaponry, using drones in that sense, to do some of the things they do today, killing our soldiers. So the forest guards, what kind of weaponry is required, and how effective will that be?
In the 101 of military tactics, there's what we call take, hold, and rebuild. So I don't expect these forest guards to be in the forefront of the warfare. Perhaps they can play a role in after the military has gone in, as it were, taking over the forested parts. Then these guys can come in and play the role of forest wardens. When I was growing up as a kid, there were forest wardens, and they were quite effective. If you go to fell a tree in the forest, they will appear and they would ask you, why are you felling that tree? But because the threat element has changed, because the threat element now has military-grade weapon, I don't see what level of weaponry we're going to give those guys that they can stand the threat element. So perhaps it would be more in the hold component, and once the military takes over, scatter them, kill the ones that they need to kill, and block, and this is extremely important, Jeffrey, block their access to weaponry. We've not done very well in that regard for now. we must block their access to both the weapons, the hardware, and then the ammunition that they are using. And then these guys the forest guards may now hold the forested part. So again, the structure, the framing of the arrangement has to be one that is supportive of the current arrangement. It shouldn't be one that would lead to more killing of our security forces, like in the manner that we're seeing at the state level in places like Zamfara, Katsina, and other locations where the state level structures don't have the kind of weaponry that the bad guys have.
We cannot dismiss the fact that there are merchants of war or merchants of violence and crisis, and even crisis actors themselves that benefit from all of this. There could be both state and non-state actors. I would like to speak to that because I just had to look at the budget again from the proposal of the president. 4.91 trillion naira is what we have earmarked for the defense of our country for the year 2025. If you look at it and compare it to the budget size, that's almost like 10% of our entire budget. And it's always the biggest, as you've acknowledged. It keeps increasing every day, and we see some of the things. We thank the military that are doing the work they should do, but isn't it time for us to begin to do the tough things that we run away from doing? Because anytime it's being raised, it's being kicked down somehow. It's like a conversation we should never have. Probing our military spending. What is the crime in it?
So this is the legacy of the long years of military rule. One of the things I've been trying to do over a period now is to introduce stronger monitoring and evaluation within our security sector. And this mustn't be done by outsiders. Almost all the ministries, departments, and agencies have either units or departments for monitoring and evaluation. So this is one of the best ways that we could enhance efficiency within the system. Earlier on, I did speak about the role of the National Assembly. We need to exact a little bit more pressure on the National Assembly so that the committees that have responsibility for oversight on the security sector will strengthen their oversight capacity. Of course, these things are not, you can't pick them on the ground. They need to train better. They need to enhance their capacity for oversight. They need to also reduce the handshake that they are having with the executive at the moment. Those who designed and framed our democracy did not design it in a manner that the handshake would be a very strong one. Yes, they should cooperate, they should collaborate, but not in areas of where it may lead to misjudgment, as it were, on the spending of resources. Again, I want to emphasize that we're dealing with an existential challenge, and as a country, we need to stop the politics and enhance public security.
Great point you've raised. Let's get away from the north and talk about some of the things that are happening down south. We've seen issues of kidnapping and issues of robbery in that sense. But kidnapping, for instance, there's a particular one I've been following for. This is on Good Friday, about 20 people or so were kidnapped along the Oron-Calabar waterway. So if you're familiar with that area between Cross River and Akwa Ibom State, you realize that the road is very bad. The Calabar road is very bad. The governments have complained. I lived in Cross River for over 15, 20 years ago, and I knew that road was bad, and it's a surprise. It's been a long time I traveled in that direction till today. That's still a conversation, 15 plus years after. So people choose to use the waterway. And then there are parts you use on that waterway that could expose you to trouble, and eventually certain persons who are kidnapped. It's almost a month now they've been kidnapped in that sense. And been trying to get them out, and they're asking for all kinds of ransom. I want you to speak to the general sense of safety and well-being, because when you talk to people in government, they say, oh, things are improving. What really should we use to mark improved security? Is it number of attacks? Is it number of fatalities? Is it a sense of safety? We know it's not possible to just have crime cut out eventually. How should we measure success in management of security? Because the president is going to be doing his midterm on May 29, 2025, and they are going to bring their scorecard, and perhaps they're going to say they are doing well.
Well, let's not preempt that, but what we can do is to use the knowledge that we have at our availability. As you know, I run a company, and part of what we do is to keep a record of security occurrences. Between the month of March and April, we saw a 49% increase in abduction in the country, Jeffrey. I repeat, 49% increase in abduction in just 1 month, month to month. Now, in terms of the geographical dispersal and distribution of this abduction, it still remains in the northern part of the country. But we're seeing an increase, just like you rightly indicated, in the southern part of the country, especially in places like the southwest and then some parts of the south-south. With regards to this particular incident in Oron, Calabar, I've been on that waterway, not once, not twice. I have a very good idea of the geography and how difficult it would be. This is with all sense of responsibility. We are praying, and whatever support we can render to the families and the security forces to bring these guys out, we will do it. But it's a dense location. It's a very difficult location to police. And so those type of occurrences, unfortunately, once they occur, it even makes it more difficult to rescue and bring out. But having said that, every inch of our territory, we've got capabilities for surveillance. And where the capabilities are weak, those are areas we need to enhance support. Technology can help us in that regard, to enhance surveillance capabilities, to look at, in a forensic manner, where the incident occurred, the movement from that location, and then, of course, the other component of surveillance. Because I'm in a public space, I'll be very careful what I say, but let's just leave it at that. Through surveillance capabilities, we can exert pressure on those that are holding them. I'm very happy that the National Assembly, I think it was the House of Rep, did discuss it, and I think there was a motion that was moved to kind of put pressure on the executive arm of government to get these 20 persons out. We also need to work closely with the local community to ensure that we harness the intelligence information that is available regarding the possible perpetrator of that particular act, and then, of course, put pressure on that particular. So there's a lot we can do, really, to assist and bring these 20 persons out of the country.
All right, Mr. Kabura, we're going to bring you back. At proper midterm, we will look at all the elements of, because it's our country, we have only one country, and the president has our mandate to lead us and manage our commonwealth. How well he's doing that with our money is going to be left to the lived-in experience of Nigerians, we will assess him, because right now, we have to force a conversation around governance. If not, every day we're talking politics, and he's barely 2 years in office. Elections are far away. There are defections here and there. It's populating the headlines. So we decided, okay, let's face governance and ask for accountability for the ones, the time spent so far. Kabir Adamo, the CEO of Beacon Security and Intelligence Consulting, thank you so much for coming on the program. We appreciate you.
A pleasure. Thank you for having me.